Yeah, for people who may not be familiar with yourself, if you want to give like a brief introduction to who you are.
Yeah, sure. My name's Heidi Briones. I ran for Congress in 2020 as a Democrat, and I've had quite a political journey since then. I'm a writer, activist, and humorous political commentator on X and content creator. So I like to talk about liberty and uh, reducing government overreach. So I tend to lean on the libertarian side, but yeah, I like to just talk about social and political issues. So I'm excited to be here and chat with everybody.
Yes. Actually, it's interesting because if I was to say like, what's your political position,
Hmm.
I would just say like Heidi just seems to be freedom oriented and common sense oriented. Like that's
Pretty accurate.
basically
Yeah.
yeah. Um, I know everybody wants labels. I know people label
Yeah.
me.
Hmm.
Um, but I don't really use it. Some people call me conservative, and maybe in some
Yeah.
ways, in other ways I'm not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm pretty open. So, um,
It's always funny how other people won't see you. It varies a lot. And I don't think anybody is in one box anymore. I really feel like most people are sick of it and really
hmm,
just, don't want to be labeled as any one thing. I think that that's the new trend. We're just really sick of identity politics and the partisanship. I think that, we did that for 20 years and we're over it.
yeah, I especially like that's why I thought this past election with Trump, I thought it was like the beginning of the end for a lot of identity stuff.
Yeah.
There, it just doesn't. And I always got the feeling like a lot of this was a trend because it
Hmm.
didn't feel truly organic. It felt kind of forced. Um, but just like any other trend, I feel like it's running its course. It's like the Macarena, you know?
Yeah.
Um, is there somebody out there still doing the Macarena? Sure, but we don't know who the hell that person is, and we don't listen to them.
They're all doing
Um,
the YMCA now, so
yeah, they're doing the YMCA. Um,
everything comes back around. It's all cyclical.
exactly. But no, and actually, I welcome that. It's almost like a return to normalcy. We're like,
Hmm.
yeah, we look different, but who cares? Like that was kind of, we had racial humor. I think about shows like Mad TV,
Hmm.
who made fun of everybody, made black jokes, Hispanic jokes, Asian jokes, and they had everybody, all different demographics, white people jokes. They had all different demographics who were on the show, and it wasn't a big deal. And you know what was
Yeah.
funny? Certain years of Mad TV, the funniest people were women. They
Oh yeah.
they were like
Yeah.
Deborah Wilson and I'm drawing a blank on Stephanie
Because
Weir.
we were allowed to, like you said, we were allowed to make fun of race or gender or all these things. And as soon as we weren't allowed to do that, I noticed like female comics would only make jokes about sex. Like it
Yeah,
started like the late 90s kind of like although like when it was things were becoming pretty woke and PC and the only thing women were allowed to talk about was sex. And then it
yeah,
was like and then so then that was the only jokes women made and there was like, well, women aren't funny and it's like because they're so scared to talk about anything else like for fear of getting canceled. So they're just like, okay, the only safe thing is to talk about my sexuality. That's the only thing that like I can't get canceled for. And so that's
yeah,
kind of where it shifted when it's like, okay, like comedy isn't really funny anymore. The guys are the only ones that are willing to push the edge, and talk about anything, that's not sexual. And so, that was kind of the end of comedy, but I think it's coming back. So, that's exciting.
yeah. It looks like it is coming back. And actually, what you're saying reminds me of Amy Schumer.
Yeah.
Um, she
Yeah.
started off just basically making dick jokes and sex jokes. And I would
There's
say,
so
I
many female
honest,
comics like that. Yeah.
yeah. Nikki Glazer is another one.
Hmm.
Notoriously makes primarily sex jokes. And I actually saw Nikki Glazer live with I think it was my ex-girlfriend. I mean, we were together at the time, but
Yeah.
um, And I
Yeah.
remember she was kind of like, there's a lot of anal jokes, and she was kind of like, "Ugh." Like after
Right?
like
It's
after
uncomfortable,
like
right? It's uncomfortable. It's kind of
after
funny,
like
like one or two jokes, but it's like the whole time for like 2 hours, you're like, all right, man.
yeah, I was going to say after like 20, 25 minutes of like banging a strange guy you don't know and anal, um, and then going back to some people think I'm a whore, like that's the setup.
Right. Yeah. And it's just
Just
like,
like,
and it's like, I mean, it's funny just because it makes you like giggle like a 12-year-old, but it's not actually funny, you know? Like it's
yeah.
kind of like it's such a lowbrow way to make people laugh. But yeah, I think the reason was because women were scared because like you had to be so woke and politically correct that what else are they
Mm.
going to talk about? Like they can't make fun of, race. They can't make fun of, gender or whatever. They can't seem homophobic or like anything. So then they just start talking about sex. I mean, there was Margaret Cho too, another example who
Mhm.
she mainly made jokes about sex and like, her other material was really funny, but it was just like it always like would veer towards like sexuality and it isn't that funny really. It's like there's only so much you can do. So I'm hoping that, bringing back like I do see people like, feeling more comfortable like whatever for better or for worse making jokes about, culture or race or different things and it's like, I feel like a lot of people forgot how to do that, so it's not always funny. It's like, but they're trying at least, and like maybe we're kind of getting to where, we don't have to be politically correct because if you have to be so politically correct, then you lose art and humor and culture and everything because you can't talk about anything.
Yeah. I Do you think that's kind of why like a lot of people have an issue with like Elon? Because Elon in some ways is kind of like, and I'm not like some people are kind of like Elon sycophants, everything he does is amazing. He's a guy, that's kind of how I
Hmm.
see him. And he has his quirks, but in some ways he's kind of a throwback because
Hmm.
he's just laughing at stuff. We didn't
Yeah.
take too many. I think a lot of Gen X people are kind of like that. We're just kind of like life is not to be taken so seriously. You just laugh at some
Yeah.
stuff. Um,
Very Gen X. Yeah. It's nice. I
yeah.
mean, because Gen X are getting to the point where they're the leaders right now. I mean, but they're not really good at being the leaders. That's the thing is like actually millennials prefer to be in that situation, and we're kind
Mm.
of getting to that age now, but not quite. But Gen X is sort of in there, and the Boomers are in there, and so Gen X is just kind of like dunking on the Boomers and the even older generation. But Gen X actually doesn't want to be the leader. They like actually don't like it. That's why like even with the DOGE stuff with Elon, like it's like okay, I'm done though in like 2026. Like there's like a deadline. Like I think it's like July 4th,
Mm.
2026. Like the department shuts down. Like it's like they only want to do it for so long, and then they want to go work on whatever's interesting to them, but they don't really want to be like the activists or that's not really their generation. And
Mm.
so it's going to be interesting to see, like, because millennials will come more of age, like when they're like in their 40 to 60s, typically when people are in positions of power, more. And it's going to be interesting to see because Gen X will have a flash in the pan because they don't really want it. Like, they don't really want it. They'll be in there a little bit, but then they really just want to like escape and do their own thing. And then we'll see how millennials evolve and um, you know, take things and what they do with the role when they're in power because we're barely starting to get there.
Mm. Well, I was looking at your bio earlier today,
Hmm.
and actually, I didn't realize like your start because I remember you when you were running for office, but I didn't realize that you kind of had like the cancel mob come after you. So what exactly were you saying that pissed people off?
Well, after I lost my election, I it was around the time when they were basically choosing who would run against Trump in 2020, and it ended up being Biden. Um, around that time, and I kind of like I've never liked Joe Biden, and I started just I was like, what do I do? Because I was like, at that time like I wasn't really pro Trump or anything.
Hmm.
And I was still kind of figuring it out, but I really hated Joe Biden. And I was like, well, I don't know what I'm going to say, but I just started being like, hey, I don't like Joe Biden. And so it got really interesting because um, like the far left was like, yeah, and they thought like I was like a socialist and like with them, and I
Hmm.
really wasn't. I just really didn't like Joe. I just really don't like Joe Biden, and I thought like he's gonna be the worst president ever, which I was completely right. Totally, completely called that. And I also told them all. I also told everybody, and I wish I had saved my tweets, but I like nuked my whole account. At some point, I deleted everything because I was just getting like harassed too bad. But anyway, but I had said like if we elect Joe Biden, it'll be Trump in 2024. So you guys are like total idiots because like he doesn't have he first of all he's too old. Second of all, he's not unifying enough. Like you're saying, he's unifying. He's not. Like it's just going to divide us more. He doesn't have. He's not smart enough. He doesn't have like a message. Like you needed somebody young. Like because I supported Andrew Yang back then. And I was like, you need somebody young that's populist that has some kind of a message, or he's going to be a one-termer. And then Trump's still young enough and like energetic enough to run in 2024, and then he'll definitely win because Joe Biden's going to be the worst president ever. And I literally called all of that. And everybody just was like super pissed at me, like that was just hardcore Democrats. And so a lot of them were people that had supported my campaign, donated to my campaign, and they got really pissed off. So I got a lot of hate there and just got really crazy. So it was a lot of that. And then, I think you mentioned that like the COVID stuff, like that definitely happened too. I mean, I was also very critical of the response on COVID, and I was critical of vaccine mandates and all of that stuff. I actually was somewhat vaccine injured, and nobody wanted to hear that either. So I couldn't really talk about anything, and I just was like, I'm out. Like I'm out because you guys are a cult. Like I can't tell you the truth about Joe Biden. I can't tell you the truth about COVID. Like I can't tell you any of this stuff, so I'm out. And then, when November came along, I ended up voting for Trump because I was like, well, my other options were like third party, and then I got like my little voters pamphlet, and Trump was like, stop the radical left and vote for me. And I was kind of like, yeah, actually, screw those guys. So I ended up voting for Trump, and like it was just like, that really pissed everybody off again. So it was just like, I mean, it was just a whole progression of things and factors that led me to kind of break out of the cult of the Democrats and realize like that they've completely lost it, and there's no way I could be associated with that because they didn't have any common sense. They weren't willing to listen rationally to facts, such as the fact that Trump would win in 2024. It was like, to me, those things were like obvious. And it was, but like they wouldn't listen to any of that, and they were acting like authoritarians, especially in my state, especially in Oregon, where I was living at the time. I live in Washington now, just across the bridge, very close to Portland still, but at the time I was living in Oregon, and it was like one of the worst states. Everything was shut down, businesses got shut down. I couldn't do anything at all, and if there's anything I hate, it's like authoritarianism and being told what I can and can't do. You can't go to the gym, can't go to restaurants, can't go grocery shopping without a mask on. It was like one of the most hardcore states, so it was a complete turnoff.
Yeah, and actually, when you right around the time that you said in 2020, when you started to kind of like pull away, was right around the same time for me. Um, well, it was a little bit before that. It was just coincidental when I started having kind of like a semi-political awakening on my own privately. This was before I got online, and it was just like everything came to a head with COVID and then George Floyd. Um,
Yeah.
and and then it was just like the part that blew my mind was watching. Like I had some progressive friends, um, but there was one particular friend. We used to have like real conversations about race, but like not oh poor us, kind of conversations. Like I would say my piece, she would say her piece. She understood where I was coming from. We would like talk about these things. It was pretty close to her. Went to her family's house like 2 years in a row for Thanksgiving, that kind of thing. And then it was like the next day, it was a complete switch. And mind you, this is someone I used to question all types of stuff. And then
Hmm.
one day I asked her, I was like, I've never heard of 6 feet apart. Like that's just never been I've never heard of this before.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying it's stupid, bad, or anything like that. I said, I was just simply saying, I've never heard of this. I've heard if you're going to sneeze, cover your nose. Like we've all heard common things about virus, not spreading viruses and stuff. But I've never heard the magical number of being 6 feet apart from someone. And she got upset. Don't be ignorant, blah, 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 and got an attitude with me. And I feel very
Okay.
vindicated because I've sat down with Dr. Jay Bhattacharya and
Hmm.
Martin Kulldorff in person, and we had this discussion. And especially Dr. Jay Bhattacharya said, it's all made up.
Oh
There-
yeah. There's no basis for it. Wasn't there?
yeah,
Didn't they come up with some kind of reason though why they did that? Like I'm blanking on it now, but I mean it wasn't scientific, but wasn't there another reason why they did that? I don't know if you recall.
it was basically Fauci's invention. Um,
Right, but there was some reason for it that they came out with. Anyway,
I can't
but yeah,
remember the full basis of it, but what he was basically saying is like there's no scientific method that is
no, it
involved in
wasn't
6 feet.
scientific. No, I think it was.
Yeah,
I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like, but I mean, just off the top of my head, it was basically like just can we control, like it was about, to me it's like about control, like how far can we push control, like if we tell them to wear a mask they'll wear a mask, okay, tell them to stand 6 feet apart, like they'll stand 6 feet apart,
mm,
like it's like what like we tell them to jump on one leg they'll jump on one leg. It
yeah,
was almost to that point, it's like they were just like we're just little test dummies, or we're just guinea pigs, and they're like, how
yeah,
far can we push it? Like if we tell them like you're gonna die, or your family's gonna die, or your grandma's gonna die, or whatever. If you don't do these things, will you do it? And almost, a lot of people did. I mean, not everybody. Like, there's a lot of Americans that are. It's America, so that we're still very much like f you,
yeah,
I'm gonna do what I want. Which is what I love about this country is like we still are very much like that, but there's a lot of people that were willing to do whatever they were told, and
yeah,
that's concerning enough. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, in some ways, and you can maybe you just call me too empathetic, but in some ways, I'm more understanding to those people than a lot of people are. And the reason why I'm understanding is because propaganda works, right?
yeah,
And propaganda works off of your fears on the unknown. No one knew what COVID was or what it was going to do or anything like that. And you have one one source of information that's coming to you. Maybe funneled through the media, but it was the state saying, "This is what you should do. This is what it's going to look like. This is how much you should be worried about it." And when you have that, and then it gets remixed and repackaged and constantly thrown down your throat that you should be scared, um, and that forces you to lose some common sense
yeah,
when it comes to certain things like the discussion over natural immunity, right? You get
yeah,
sick once, chances are if you get sick again, it's not a big deal, that kind of thing, or you might not get sick from the same strain.
right,
So these particular discussions were kind of thrown out the window because of propaganda. And I just saw a lot of people who were scared. And when you're scared, you don't think rationally, right? You just
right.
you just
Oh
operate
yeah,
off of fear. So
yeah. That's how fear works. I mean, that's why it's so powerful. Yeah,
yeah, so we just saw a lot of an exaggerative amount of propaganda that was going.
yeah,
Like a perfect example, CNN had the counter of how many people have died. Like I swear, there's going to be a documentary maybe 5 years from now, just going back and looking at the pandemic era and just see all the dystopian shit we did. It's like,
yeah.
what was that? The death
Yeah,
clock?
still too soon. People still can't deal with it. So you're probably right. Probably 10, whatever, 10 years after the fact. People
Yeah,
are gonna be like, wow, we did all that. And I mean, it's crazy because not once did I see like somebody fall down in the street and die or something, but that's what they were acting that it was like. They were acting like it was like that. But really, what was happening is somebody would get very sick, they'd go to the hospital, they'd test them, they say you're positive for COVID. And then they were putting them on these machines that were making it worse. And all this stuff was going on that they were, it was not just as simple as you get COVID and you're gone. I mean, it is for certain people that have comorbidities or were very elderly. But it was really like there were a lot of steps that they were taking because they didn't know what to do that were making people worse.
Yeah.
Including like the respirators. I remember like the respirators, like they were like, we don't have enough and we got to like, ship them in and we got to make them. And then it's like, and then like almost everybody that went on one was dying. And you're like, dude, what the like, maybe this isn't the way. And now they're they'll admit that like that did kill a lot of people, and
Yeah.
and it's just like, okay, so we didn't know. I mean, some of it is we just didn't know. Some of it's just like they're just trying things because you have to try something, and some of it's malpractice, and some of it's like gross negligence. But
Mhm.
either way, people still like aren't willing to talk about it. Like if you talk about even half of this stuff on YouTube, there's like a warning, on your account, and I mean, people still aren't willing to have these honest conversations about, you know, like everybody wearing cloth masks. It did nothing, like very very little to stop the spread. How they said how the president said vaccines stop the spread. It's been shown that that's not necessarily the case. So it's like these things are the people still aren't willing to talk about, and we can feel vindicated, but there's no that from the other side, there's nothing. It's just like no, like we're not going to budge there. We're not going to say that we were wrong, and that's like it's still concerning to me. It's still concerning to me because if we did have common sense and we were on the right path, and people would be willing to be like, yeah, I got that so wrong.
Mhm.
Wow, I was so wrong. But I'm just not hearing a lot of people really, really saying that on, one side of things. I see people saying that move over to the other side and they're like, I'm done with you guys. But then there's still people that are like on the Democratic side around here. I live in, very blue area, as blue as it gets. And people are still wearing masks outside. And I still see it. I still see like just ridiculous things where I'm like, come on, guys. Like, now that doesn't do anything. Like, you have to know, but you don't want to admit. You don't want to admit that you were wrong for so long. So you'd rather just like continue down that path.
So when it comes to the mass, I see three types of people. I think three. I see the person who's who lived, and I've seen these people who lived 3 to 4 years in complete fear. Like it was a struggle for them to leave the house type of fear. Um, and they think that if they breathe natural air and there are people around, that they're going to die. Um, and that's incredibly sad. I don't care what your political affiliation is, but there are people who've been fear mongered that strongly. Then there are the people who have seen the mask as a symbol. So
Yeah.
like the Taylor Lorenz of the world,
Yeah.
right? Um, she might be a hypochondriac. I don't know. I think she has a lot of issues, but I think she's also doing it as a symbol. Like,
Mhm.
for example, she
Yeah.
showed up at a party, but she's still wearing the mask. It's kind of like, I don't think you're that worried about getting a virus. I think you just want to show the symbol of what side you're on.
Yeah,
Um,
that's definitely a virtue signal. I mean, it's
yeah.
ridiculous. I had to like avoid family because it was so like, it was ridiculous. There's like pictures of like a family wedding where like half the people have masks on and the other half don't, and they're in wedding photos with masks on and then a lot of them have it down here. Like they don't even have it on. They just have it like down here. And I'm like, why do you have a mask on your neck? Like take the thing off completely. You're taking pictures like for a wedding, but they still want people to know like that they care that much because it was 2021, or
Mhm.
whatever. And so they're like, I can't be like seen. And I was actually told that while I was running for office because I wasn't wearing a mask going out and I was doing campaign things, but I was still like trying to do social distancing. So I'd be like, okay, yeah, like I'm gonna come by your house and drop off a sign, like I've got signs made. You want one? I'm gonna drop it off. So I'd like drop it off, and I try to stay like away from them, and just be like, hey, yeah, I'm dropping this sign off, and then I was taking some pictures like while I was doing that, or taking some video, and then somebody told me, hey, you need to be wearing a mask, like you can't be seen, doing this stuff like while you're campaigning without a mask, and they
Mm.
literally told me that, and they weren't. It wasn't like you should be careful, or like you should be it wasn't about stopping the spread, it was just about optics. It was completely like optics. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. And I was like, all right, sure, because it's like, like maybe you guys know what you're talking about. Well, I guess all the other candidates are wearing masks, so let me go. It's 2020, let me go and wear a mask. And now I realize like just how ridiculous that was. I was just willing to be like, sure, yeah, let me do that. And I'm like, there's no reason other than optics.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there are obviously, you mentioned that you had some sort of medical issue because of the
Yeah,
vaccine.
yeah.
And I know someone, um, they got their second booster and they passed away a few weeks later.
Oh, gosh.
And
Hmm.
here the problem is this: we're not allowed to discuss that as a possibility, right? So
No. Yeah.
I've never brought it up to them, but I know,
No.
um, so
Yeah, that's awful.
uh,
I didn't get any of the boosters. By then, I was already like pretty much red pilled on the whole thing. I did get the initial Pfizer shots because I was basically told you can't visit your grandparents unless you have them because my grandpa had like cancer.
yeah,
So it was like, he's like in his 80s, and they're both in their 80s. So I was told by my family, everybody needs to get vaccinated or you won't be able to see, and I thought at the time you weren't going to be able to travel even, because they were saying you can't
mhm,
travel unless you have it. There were certain instances where I live where you couldn't go to a bar. You couldn't go to a bar and get a drink without showing it. So I was just like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to be like, like I was like, I'm pretty young and healthy, like, and I was like, I'm female too, like, it seemed like men had like more adverse effects,
yeah,
with their heart and things. So I was like, I'll probably be fine. Like, I should get it because like I'm young enough, and like I was young enough and I was healthy enough. But like now I'm just like, wow, that was like really stupid because I didn't think like, oh, they weren't telling anybody this. Like, go to your doctor and see. Like, you had to do all this research on your own, and there wasn't much out there. But no one's like, yeah, go to your doctor and ask your doctor if they approve of you getting the COVID vaccination. Like, I don't think I ever heard that. They were just like, you need to go get it. It's available everywhere. Like, I did a drive-through one. They're like, you just drive through, and we like poke you, and then you drive,
yeah,
and like there was no there's no doctor or no consultation. They're not like, hey, do you have any comorbidities? Because like I had a problem with my blood, essentially, like it's when I was a baby, and
mhm,
that same problem came back after I got the vaccination. So basically it's kind of like my blood doesn't clot, and so you get blood under the skin. And so I used to get these like kind of like they look like rashes almost. It's just like red marks on your skin, and I had to take like steroids when I was a baby, and it went away. It wasn't like it's called like purpura something, and it went away. And then I got it again. It was the only time I've ever gotten it again after I took the shot. And I just like woke up in the morning. And first of all, I had like a weird chest pain one night, and I was like, that's weird. And then I woke up in the morning and I had that like purpura like on my leg. And I was like, what the heck is this? Like, and I like I haven't had this since I was a baby, and I only know because people told me that that's what I had. And so I was like, that's really weird. And I ended up doing like a whole thing prescribed by a naturopath to kind of get the toxins from the vaccine out of my system. I don't know how much of it was legit, but it did include ivermectin, um, and a few other things. Hello?
that's yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Well, I couldn't see you.
Oh, sorry.
Um, yeah, so I did this whole thing, and then I don't know. I mean, I did feel better, and that never happened again. I never got like a chest pain again, or I never got that situation again. So maybe it worked, or maybe it was all in my head. But either way, I mean, it was mild. I mean, I wasn't like super ill like a lot of people were, or obviously didn't die or anything, which is horrible. But I did feel like my inflammation went up. afterwards. Like autoimmune things run in my family. But if I would have gone to a doctor, I feel like what they should have asked is like, hey, do you have, did you have anything like on this list? Or like, do you have autoimmune disease that runs in the family? Like, okay, well, how old are you? Healthy? Are you like exposed to people like a lot? I'm like, no, like I work at home. Like I'm not exposed to any, like, okay, well, it's up to you whether you want to get it or not. But there was no conversation like that. It was just like, you got to get it. And that's, that's the problem that I have with it. Cause it's like, things that are medical are individualized, right? Like, should you do this thing?
Supposed to
Not,
be.
right? Like, it's like it depends on the person, right? Depends on the body. Like, should you be on this particular diet? I don't know. It depends on you and your body, like if you can tolerate it or not. It's not for everybody. Some people do well on carnivore. Some people do well as vegan. Some people do well all different range because people are different. But that wasn't talked about, and that's when I was like, oh, this is actually concerning because people don't care about this on the individual level. It's very collectivized, and that's never really a good thing with medicine.
Yeah. And I agree with Tracy. It should have never been mandated. Um,
Never. Never in any situation. I mean, it's so ridiculous for me to have to like I had to like show I actually walked out. Like I wouldn't do it. Like I did it I think I did maybe did it once, but like you couldn't go and get a beer. So I'm not gonna show like this 22-year-old bartender my vaccination card so that I can get a beer. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna leave then. Like if I like I'm just gonna leave then. I'll just go home because I can't do it. So it was awkward in a few social situations. Like it'd be like someone be like, "Meet me over here. We'll get a drink." Okay, get over there. Oh, you gotta show your vax card. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm just gonna leave then. And they're like, I thought you got vaccinated. And I'm like, I did, but I don't want to show it. It's the principle of the matter. Like, I'm not gonna show it because that's just ridiculous. I'm not gonna participate in that. So any place that's like asking for it, I'm just not gonna give them my money. It's the only vote I had at that point. I'm like, I already screwed up, so the only vote I have is my dollar now.
hmm. Shout out to Natalie
Shout
Martinez.
out. Yeah, hey Natalie.
Um, yeah, you know what it was for me? I didn't like the manipulation. That was like one of the big things. The amount of manipulation that was happening as far as um, I remember seeing press conferences from Democrats who are like, can you believe there's still people out there who haven't gotten vaccinated? It was just like, excuse me. It was like they were just like disgusted with us if we
Yeah.
didn't get it. It
Oh
was like,
yeah.
I'm like,
And then they
man.
put that attitude on the people too. I mean, I remember like family members and stuff being like telling me stuff like that. Like, yeah, these people won't get vaccinated, like these conspiracy theorists, like weirdos, like won't get vaccinated, anti-vaxxers. And I'm like, why are you calling people that? Like, you don't know their opinions. Like, it's like you don't know if they've gotten every other vaccine before now, which is the case for a lot of people. Then they didn't have
Most
any issue
people,
with
yeah.
it. Yeah, and so they're not anti-vaxxers. And I mean, if they are, then that's fine too. Then that's like they don't have to dehumanize them, even if they are. Then that's their prerogative too. Like it's everybody's choice, like what they put in their body. Like I would think, like you shouldn't be forced to put anything in your body that you don't feel comfortable putting in your body or your children's bodies, right? That's what I believe. So
Yeah.
I was very much for medical freedom in that way, and I found out a lot of people weren't. And I always thought the lefties were like the anti-vaxxers, and they were more medical freedom. But then it really switched, and it's really bizarre to see how that went down.
Yeah. And that was actually the thing about 2020 was like you really got to see one who was principled,
Mm.
um, and if they were able to be consistent about certain things. And two, we just saw an obvious political shift. Um, you ever hear people like they always talk about uh, well, the Republicans and Democrats switched sides in 1965 because of the Civil Rights Bill. And you're like, no, they didn't. Because
Yeah,
you could
no,
clearly look and see like the strongest
he
opponents towards the
switched.
Civil Rights Bill stayed a Democrat for their entire
Yeah,
career. Like,
right.
but this what happened here was like a political, I don't even want to call it switch. I want to call it a political shift and a directional shift because I'm probably going to write something about this pretty soon. But I realized I was like, if you asked me, let's say, 4 years ago, what would you call the Republican Party? Outside of Trump, it's kind of a dying old party. You
Yeah.
know, I've been to some Republican meetings, great people, but you see the average age is
Yeah.
basically a senior citizen.
Yeah.
And now, and it reflected that in leadership. It's usually older white men who
Yeah.
are leading the
Yeah.
party. And then I was looking around, look at their appointments, look at all the people who are surrounding them. And Trump is boasting. He's saying we're the big tent party. We have all these people from all different backgrounds, faiths, ethnicities who are here under one vision of making America great, which should be everyone's vision, right? So when I'm looking, I'm saying, wait a second. The Republicans are somewhat defiant, kind of edgy in some ways. They're the counterculture. They're younger. All the uprising uh, younger people who would have been on the Democrat side. A perfect example, Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
She should be the new right Democrat who was coming up, right? And what they do? They pushed her out and
Oh
labeled
yeah.
her a Russian asset and all this other bullshit.
Yeah.
And they completely isolated themselves to become conformists.
Yeah.
And they're not cool. And the perfect example of them not being cool is that they're taking a side of constitutionality and Elon's bad and let's protest outside of USAID as if that's the winning position in America. It's to defend a department like and it just blew my mind. And then you look and see who's out there. Who are the prominent faces? They're all 75 and up.
Maxine Waters. Yeah. I
Chuck
mean, like,
Schumer, like
yeah, Pelosi, whatever. I mean, they're dying. Like, I mean, they live. I mean, it's sad to say in a way, but not really. But they have to die out. Like for that, they just have. They're gonna have to die because they're not gonna leave, and people are gonna keep voting for them, and they're gonna die in office, just like Dianne Feinstein did, in a
yeah,
wheelchair, being pushed in to vote. Like, can't even, think. You just can't think at that age. Like, cognitively, you're not in a position to like be making decisions. It's just a fact.
yeah,
I mean, a very rare, percentage of people over 85 like will be able to make like difficult decisions about, the country. It's just you have cognitive decline and physical decline, and you can't even, you see now Mitch McConnell can't even walk upstairs or downstairs. It's like, you have so much physical decline that it's a hazard to even have you like, going into these places, and they're gonna be there until they die, and that's it, and they're just holding on for dear life,
yeah,
literally. And it's bizarre because you're just like, you don't know the pulse of the country. Like, you're just too old to be making like certain decisions. You don't understand where we're at, and Trump is like a rare older person that does understand and does like, know the pulse and is able to like see where things are going and see it like a few steps ahead and see where things are going to be, and that's really rare. But I think that when that generation dies out, yeah, I mean, it's up to younger people to do something, and I mean, hopefully we're going in the right direction. We'll see.
yeah. And even when it comes to Trump, obviously Trump is older, but Trump is a cultural icon. And I think a
Right.
lot of people forgot that. Trump
Oh, he's always
just
been. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, Trump just by happenstance of dancing a particular way created a cultural movement of a dance that people mimicked. And he wasn't trying to do the Macarena and hope it catch on. He just did his thing and it caught
Yeah.
on just
Yeah.
organically. Like that's a cool factor that the Democrats used to have,
They used
right?
to. Bill
They
Clinton was cool. He was playing the
Bill Clinton,
saxophone, whatever. Like,
yeah,
it's like people said Bill Clinton was the first black president because they thought he was cool, because that was like, that was the time. It was like, okay, like, and the Democrats were cool. Like in the 90s, they were cool. I mean, it's like they were the cooler party. It was like, okay, more edgy, more like open minded. The
yeah.
Republicans were lame. And it's completely shifted, and it is Trump. It's like, and people can deny that if they want because they don't like it. They don't like that they're losing, but he did totally shift everything because he's never not been a household name. I mean, since I've been, alive, he's always been a
Yeah,
household name, in different ways. First, it was, obviously he's an entrepreneur, and then he had, the Apprentice, and then he went into politics, and it's like, but he's always been there. And it's like he's always had his pulse on what's going on, and people would always know his name, say his name, look and see what he was doing, what did he think. And he used to be cool too. He was a Democrat when it was cool. And then he
yeah,
realized they were over, and he's like, they're over. So I'm gonna run as a Republican. Like the Democrats have lost the pulse. They're not on the pulse anymore. Like the Republican Party is gonna be the one that has the pulse in 5 to 10 years, and I'm going to be the leader there. And he saw ahead of time because he's always had the pulse. He's a guy that, whatever, he eats McDonald's and stuff, like for better or for worse. Like he is kind of a regular dude for being a billionaire in a lot of ways. Like he does kind of have that pulse of what people are thinking and what they're doing, even though he's much older. So he's definitely a cultural
yeah,
phenomenon. Yeah.
yeah. And I mean, Tracy, yes, sort of.
I think now he is a politician. It's kind of hard to say he's not a
Yeah,
politician when he's on his
that's what I
second
was gonna
term as
say.
president. Like it's kind of hard to still say that he's become one, but he's different. He's a populist, which we haven't had a populist in so long that we forget what a populist is like. But he's
Yeah,
a populist. Yeah.
I would say even more so that he is a politician now, and it's actually a good thing because there's a difference between first term Trump and second term Trump, even just
Oh,
in a short period of time.
big difference. Big difference.
A perfect example, politically speaking, he's about to sign these executive orders, the one for basically protecting Title IX, right? And what does he do? Not only does he have all these women, he understands optics. He has all these women here and young girls who are there, but he also has Mike Johnson standing right in front of him, right? Because he understands it's not going to be enough for me to sign this. We got to pass something, right, Mike? He kept going, right, Mike? You got a lot of people who support you, right, Mike? He wasn't doing that in this first term because he had to, I guess he learned from some of his mistakes, but he understands that he cannot rule by the pen because as soon as Biden got in, he just reversed everything that Trump did, right? And Trump reversed basically everything that Biden did, right? So he understands these things now, and he's actually being a politician, but even more so, he's being less hesitant than he was in his first term.
Oh yeah, way less.
He's a
He
lame
was still
duck
trying to
president,
be like,
and he does not care.
yeah. I think his first term, he still thought like he could like I don't know win people over. He could like kind of play the game, and he was figuring it out. But like now, he's just like, no, that doesn't work with these people. Like you just
Yeah,
have to you have to be a bull in the china shop. You have to just be like, we're doing it. Like it's done. Now you have to do this, and like that's it. And like, so I think he's definitely learned a lot. He learned a lot in his first term, and that you can't let these people have an inch because they'll take a mile, and you can't wait for anything. You can't think that people are going to do things that they say they're going to do because they're not. It's all just bullshit, and he's realized that. He's like, they're all BSers, and I have to just, I have to just do it quickly, and surround myself with people like Elon Musk who doesn't give a shit, who will do it quickly, and to where I don't have
yep,
to do it if I can just trust that they will get it done. And he's put way better people around him this time, like
yes,
by miles. Like they're way better people. So he just trusts that he can just sit there and know that like trust them to do what they need to do, and that's cool. That's like it's good to see. It's good to see that we're getting so much done. It hasn't even been a month. It's wild.
yeah. No, I was telling someone like a week or so ago, I was like, I've never seen anything like this.
I've
Normally,
never
it's like,
seen that much.
guys, calm down. They just got into office.
No, now
It was,
I was mad when he didn't do things day one. If he did them day 2 or 3, I was like, like day one, because that's how fast like they were moving. And I was like, well, he did all this day one. He did like 57 things day one. Why couldn't he do the number 58? And people are like, chill, give it like a day. And I'm like, I'm giving him like one more day tops because like there's so much that's getting done that like a day is a year now. And you just
yeah,
like let's go, keep doing it, keep doing everything that you promised. I mean, and I may not agree with everything, but damn, it's like I agree with a lot, and it's been very effective. It's impressive. Even the left, I think there was some podcast, I forget which one, a very lefty podcast was like, damn, I'm like impressed, like just that he's actually for one doing what he said he was going to do, and he's able to do it at this speed, and he's this effective. I don't think I've ever seen anybody do it, and it's like, yeah, it's called actually having a president. Like we haven't
Yeah,
actually had one. We haven't had one in so long that we don't know what it's like.
yeah, and I agree. Well, Tracy was saying that she's 55, she's never seen this speed before,
Yeah.
and yeah, I've been I'm 40 now. I've been paying attention to politics. I would say since like
Yeah.
early 20s, mid early 20s, and I've never seen this
No.
much being
Usually
done.
it's BS, you're like everybody's like, you have a president, but the president can't do that much. He can only do so much. That's kind of, but well, the president
Yeah,
can't do that. They can't do everything. It is the president. They're just kind of, they're the head, they're the figurehead. And it's like that's been like the concept for a while, that they don't do a whole lot, like except like run the military, and there's like a few things that they can do, but they can't. And then they're like, well, let's push it. Trump's like, screw that. Like, how much can I do? Like, like
yeah,
what actually can I do though? What's the limit? And they're like, no, you can actually do a lot, sir. Like, you could actually do this and this. And he's like, all right, well, let's try it. Like, and it's like, it's that kind of attitude. When before they were like, well, no, you don't want to upset anybody because, when you leave the presidency, you want speaking gigs, you want to start a foundation, you want to, whatever, go out to Martha's Vineyard and like
yeah,
have fancy parties and like be cool and be with the elitists. But Trump doesn't give a shit about any of that. Like he's already not in the cool kids club, and he's already, on his own island. And so he's just like, well, screw it. Let's take it as far as we can go. And
yeah.
you got to love that attitude. I mean, even if you don't agree with everything, just the attitude of promises made, promises kept is very refreshing.
Yeah, and I think what's sad for a lot of Democrats, maybe not the leftists, but the moderates that are still they're still holding on and hoping that the Democrats come back to being the old Democrats. But I wish they would understand the reason why he's appealing is because he's a throwback. Like
Yeah.
he is a throwback Democrat. All the stuff that the Democrats used to talk about, strong borders, like they used to
Yeah.
talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
Now,
They used to be strong on
granted,
crime. They used
strong
to be
on
like
crime,
all this stuff. Like, yeah. I mean, it's crazy. They used to be, like, oh, like he's like moderate on social issues. That's like he's totally a '90s Democrat. You know,
yeah,
it's like it's not anything new. It's just like they're just mad that he's doing what they used to do, and they can't do it anymore because now they've told everybody that it's bad to do what he's doing, and now they put themselves in like the worst position ever because now they can't like agree with him, like, and they can't like be on that side without like basically because they've just said that he's the worst and he's literally Hitler and stuff, and like so now you can't even be cool now. Like, so you just pretty much, like I said, you pretty much just have to die now. There's like nothing else you can do. You just have to like die because you're not passing the torch because you won't let go. And so you're just going to die off and be dinosaurs. And like your legacy is going to be like just sucking, like just being like horrible. And it's sad to see. It's just like in a way, but whatever, that's the way it goes, and it's over, and they screwed the pooch, and nobody is buying into it anymore. I think like you
yeah.
know like the whole hope and change with Obama that never happened and never came. Everybody's like, you can't fool us anymore. Like you just really can't fool us anymore. It's not going to work.
You know, and Tracy was saying you don't have to agree with everything. Yes, now Democrats are for the 20% instead of the 80% with issues. Yeah, I mean that's absolutely true. They've taken the every niche position, every unpopular position, like mutilating children is not a popular position, right?
No,
But
that's
they've
cringe.
taken
Yeah,
this, they've taken every, and it's like so obvious. Why would you do that? But they've
because
taken
they're
every fringe
yeah.
position.
I mean, they're really being told what to do by the far left is like pushing them and pressuring them and basically, you know, forcing them in a way to like go with their positions, and they're being fed these positions from the far left, and they're like, okay, that's what we need to do, otherwise like they're going to say that, this, we're not going to get funding, we're not going to get this. And it's like, that's where we're left now. That's
Yeah.
where we're at.
And I just, and another thing that, and we have to constantly bring up, Trump has only been in office for a few weeks. And we
Seems like a year. Seems like a year passed.
and there are certain things that have happened that we've been told would never be able to happen, right? Oh,
Yeah.
balancing the budget. No, you can't balance the budget. We gotta raise taxes, guys. We just gotta keep raising taxes.
Yeah,
The,
sorry. If you want good things, if you want to have things, you got to pay more in taxes. Yeah,
right.
we got to be like Europe. We got to pay 50, 60% if we want, to have good things or,
You
nice
gotta
things.
pay your fair share.
Pay your
Pay
fair
your
share.
fair
Yeah,
share.
people are paying their fair share. And like, you don't want to, support poor people. Oh, you're such a, evil person. You're not willing to pay a little more in taxes to like give everybody, like a decent standard of living. Like all this, like, all this talk. And it's like, that's not how it works, guys. Like the more that the
Yeah.
government wastes and spends, the more our cost of living goes up, the more inflation goes up, the more interest rates go up. And now we're actually being explained basic economics, by people that know what the hell they're talking about and are willing to do things like audit the IRS. Like they're going to audit the IRS. Like how satisfying is that to people that are struggling and, have tax bills and are get audited when they're just trying to barely make it, and now we're like, no, we're going to audit the IRS because we don't think they're doing what they should be doing with our money.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's very satisfying, to the American people to be like, yeah, what the hell are they doing my tax dollars? Now that I know that they're doing this crazy, like, ridiculous things like funding, I don't know, transgender education in Liberia or whatever it was. It's like, what is happening? Like just straight money laundering and scams that we've been funding, and now everybody's pissed. We're just like, you know what? Like we're not going to put up with that anymore. Now that we have the knowledge, we're done.
And you know what's crazy? The crazy stuff, there's a lot of crazy stuff that's happening. But the point I wanted to bring up before is that Trump has only been in office a few weeks,
Mm.
and he's been able to show that there are things that you can do. And so if he's able to do it, that means that everyone else refused to do those things, and they were not
Yes.
interested in doing those things.
Mm-hmm.
And that to me is more of an examination as to what the problem hasn't been. People throw around uniparty, and I sort of understand what they mean, but it's a mentality, right? It's not just it's not just Obama gets in there and Obama has all these ideas and he wants to do these things, and it's just Obama decided not to do it. It's an entire apparatus, because when you get there, you have all these advisors, you
Mm-hmm.
have your chief of staff, you have the department heads, you have the military, you have all of these people. And when you try to do something, well, sir, well, hold on, right? You
Yeah.
have a whole bunch of people, a bunch of bureaucrats pumping the brakes. Well, we don't want to do that because you might piss off the lobbyists in here. So you have to worry about, well, you want to run a re-election, right? It just becomes this entire thing. Like you said, you want to leave office, you want to be seen as favorable, right? And even if, I'm just using Obama as an example, even if Obama had the best of intentions, he does not have the balls to do the thing that actually needed to be done, to go after an entire apparatus that is sucking the country dry. And it just becomes that person's problem, or living in denial. It's not that bad. You know what? We'll just raise some taxes and stuff like that. The fact that Elon put up that the US Treasury may be sending out $100 billion a year in fraudulent payments.
Yeah. Man.
And then when you point this out, people say, well, in the grand scheme of things in the US budget, that's not that much. It's like, hold on a second. If someone had $100,000 of my
Mm-hmm.
money and it was all fraudulently spent, I'd be pissed. We're talking
Yeah.
about $100 billion
Yeah.
a year.
A year. Yeah. Every single year. Yeah.
And that's just one
And
thing.
tip of the iceberg, tip of the iceberg. Yeah, that's only what we can see so far, which is crazy because I mean, we haven't even gotten to the real iceberg yet. We haven't even really dug in yet. We're still at the very tip, and it's that bad. I mean, but I
Yeah,
mean, I actually think Obama was a puppet of the deep state because, I mean, it only makes sense. I mean, I don't think he pushed back at all. I think he was literally like,
no,
you tell me what to do. You tell me what to do, and I'll make it sound real pretty with my nice voice, and my cool attitude. And, like,
yeah.
like, I mean,
Well,
because he didn't push back on anything. I mean, his, Affordable Care Act has made healthcare unaffordable for everybody. Costs have only gone up. I mean, in some cases, 300% more expensive for healthcare. So, I mean, it helped a few people, but it really drove the cost up so much that it only really helped like a few people on the edges, and everybody else gets screwed. And it's just like anytime, that's what Elon says, like anytime they say what like the name of the bill or the name of the act, it does the opposite. So it's the Affordable Care Act. Okay, so it's gonna make it unaffordable. Like it's
yeah,
like and it's just like that's like the biggest example to me because it's like, if you're a puppet of the deep state, what would you do? Like you would do whatever they said. Okay, we need insurance companies want to make more money, the lobbyists want to make more money. Like how can we like line their pockets more? Like a farm is huge. Like all of our stocks are in pharma. We need to make some more money off of those. Like how can we get some more money out of that? Oh, easy. I'll just like make an act called the Affordable Care Act, which actually, gives more money to insurance companies and all of these HMOs and everything, and everybody will just get fat and happy, and most Americans will get screwed like in the end, but they'll feel warm and fuzzy about it because we'll throw in like pre-existing conditions, you know
yeah,
and we'll be like, okay, and we'll make it sound really nice and package it really well and give them like a new website or something. They'll like that, make it seem like it's official when really we're just screwing them. So it's that type of thing. It's like nobody wanted that. Nobody needed that. We just needed the cost to go down. We just need it to be affordable. That's it. Like we don't really care like about having a website or calling it whatever or anything else. Like we just need everything to be affordable. And then you can afford to get the care that you need without insurance, like would be ideal. You should be able to go to a doctor like you used to. They used to have family doctors. You go in, you pay the cost. They show you what the cost is. There used to be, there could be transparency, for example, have a price list, be like, what do you need done? Here's the prices. And then you can figure out how to afford it. But instead, it's like we're beholden to insurance or Medicare or Medicaid or these systems that are bureaucratic and drive the cost up. So to me, it's like that's a sign that you're part of the deep state. If you're willing to like put this whole thing together and package it as affordable, when it's really screwing everybody, it's like that's why I really think Obama was just a deep state puppet and just a whole psyop of his own.
yeah. And I would go as far as saying that Obama of is at the end of the day was part of a particular ilk of people. They like to say he's a community organizer. All right. The guy was Ivy League bred. I mean, and you got to see it in real time. As soon as he got into office, we're dealing with an economic crisis and all this stuff. And you see Wall Street, they fucked with the housing market and did all
Oh
this stuff that
yeah.
they shouldn't have, right? And what do? You bail them out.
Yeah. What
And
is
you
that?
prosecute no one. Prosecute no one. No, I
Yeah.
don't think there's
You're part
anybody
of the deep
prosecuted.
state. Like you're part of the problem. You are part of the problem because you let everybody you're part of it. Like you have to be part of it. Like there's no way Trump would do that. They'd be like, you're getting prosecuted. Like you like it's like I mean, you can see it now. It's like there's no way he would bail them out. He'd be like, no, like sink or swim. Like there's just no way because when somebody's part of it and when they're not now. And
Yeah,
that's like the real important part with Trump. It's not necessarily Trump. It's not necessarily like some of the policies are awesome, some are okay, some are but the thing that really is important is that now you can tell if somebody's part of the deep state and the establishment or not. And you can really tell now, and he's made it very, very clear. And that's so important because I don't think we can move forward as a country and have a real country, like a real actual country where, we can be proud of, if we don't have transparency and we don't know what's going on and we're being lied to and propagandized all the time. We
yeah,
can't have pride in our country. You can't be proud of that. You can't love your neighbor. You can't fix the division eventually. We'll hopefully be able to do that. You can't unify. You can't have, a new golden era of America. You can't have any of that if it's all a lie, right? Because it's
Yeah.
not. It's not going to be real.
And actually, someone tweeted about this article that was written talking about the unemployment numbers under the Biden administration, and this is part of the problem when it comes to certain numbers, and the Democrats were notorious for this. They're like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Those numbers came out, and those numbers show everything is fine." And then you're like, "I live in real life, and all the people I know are struggling. So what the hell are you talking about?"
Yeah.
Um, and so it was talking about the unemployment numbers. I think the unemployment numbers were showing like 4 to 5% or something like that. And they're like, "Look, 4 to 5% unemployment, that's really good." Yes, in theory, but the effective unemployment numbers, because they're counting everyone with a part-time job, and maybe the only
Yeah.
reason you have a part-time job is because you can't find full-time employment.
Right,
Um,
right. Or you just never filed for unemployment. You just fell out of the job market entirely. Those people don't get counted. You have to actually,
exactly.
basically file for unemployment, like act like tell somebody you're unemployed. And there's a lot of people that just give up and they're like, they
Yeah,
just drop out and they're like, I'm just not going to try anymore. I'm gonna just like, I'm not going to do anything. And if you're not on the books with the government, they don't know. Like they don't
yeah,
know if you're unemployed or not. And a lot of people just dropped out and they're like, screw it, I'm gonna like whatever, get into the crypto market or something. Like I'm never going back to work
yeah,
because it's a joke. And a lot of that happened. And yeah, it's not documented and they lie all the time. But you're absolutely right. I mean, when they say these things, like anything, I mean, there's so many different topics where they're like, this is going on, and you're like, but that's not the reality. Like that's not my experience. That's not anybody I know. It's not their experience. It's not what you see when you go out. Like if they say the economy is doing great and you go walk down the street in any city and all the restaurants are shut down and and like there's homeless people on the side of the road smoking fentanyl and like you're like, dude, come on, like none of this is like this is not the reality. Like you're not living in reality, and it's very interesting because there are people that are living in reality, and there's people that are completely not living in reality. They don't
yeah,
live there. So there's multiple realities going on where the people live in, and when you meet somebody that's not living in yours, it's very shocking. Like it's like wow, and I think everybody gets like culture shock or something when that happens. It's just like they can't even understand. But I think people that have common sense and that have moved, to be more independent can see that. But the people that are deep into it, they can't even see it. They can't even comprehend like our reality, but we can comprehend theirs. Because we're like, I
yeah,
understand that that's like what you're seeing, but you can't comprehend mine. Like you can't even understand it. Like it's beyond what you can understand because you're too far in it.
yeah. No, that's absolutely right. Cecil Grant was saying, then 3 months later you get the real numbers, and he's right
Yeah. Yeah.
every
Yeah.
time.
3 months later. You hope 3 months later. Sometimes they hold them for much longer, but yeah, you get the real numbers. I mean, we're having more and more transparency now, like thankfully due to Trump and DOGE and, the people that are in now are want to like bring the information to light. Because they understand that's how we have a golden age in America. Just like I was saying, I mean, you can't move forward without the truth. They're going to bring out the JFK files, MLK, all of this stuff is going to come out. And it's like, we want the truth about everything now. Like, we want the truth and we demand it. And if you know something at this point, especially if it's like 60 years old, come on, there's no national security risk. Like, look, let's see it. Like, what happened and what's going on. And if it was the CIA or, it's something that we did internally, we want to know about it so we can root that out. And then it doesn't happen again because that's not the type of country we want to live in. We don't want to have a shadow government. That type of stuff happens in other countries. That's the kind of stuff that happens in supposed third world countries. It shouldn't happen here. But if it's
Right.
happening here, we need to know so that it doesn't happen again because we want to have pride in the country and we want to move forward and have, a strong America moving forward. Otherwise, there's no country left. There's nothing left. And we need to know, do we have a country or not? Like what's
Yeah.
going on here?
And I'm going to actually finish
Yeah.
part of the unemployment numbers. Part of
Yeah.
the reason I brought it up, they were saying that the effective unemployment rate was actually closer to 23%.
Oh, it definitely was. Yeah. I mean, I was working at that time and selling health insurance. And so I was getting calls all the time with people signing up for Obamacare because they weren't working. So they didn't have health insurance for their job anymore, but they did have income. And so they were like, well, I can pay for my own health insurance. So I was taking these calls day in, day out. People are like, yeah, I'm getting like the max from unemployment. I'm getting like like more than I was getting at my job. And like, so this is my income. And like, can I get insurance? Like, yeah, you can get insurance. And that was like all day long. So I knew it wasn't low. I was like, no way, dude. I'm getting 10, 20 of these calls a day. And, you never would get that type of thing. That many people needing insurance. It's because they're not working. I mean, they didn't have a
Yeah,
job. They were getting unemployment. It was obvious to anybody that was, living in reality.
yeah.
And then it comes out, yeah, it was really like 25%. Yeah.
And what that makes me think about is the other hot topic is illegal immigration. So we're fed the line of they're coming here to do the jobs that Americans don't want to do. And if we had real numbers to see that maybe the unemployment rate's closer to 23%, that sounds relatively high. So maybe those jobs that Americans supposedly don't want to do actually are jobs that they should be available for Americans to do because we're broker that it seems to be. And if I'll just use New Jersey as an example. I don't know what Oregon's like or in Washington. New Jersey has the fifth highest Hispanic population. I think we have the highest Hispanic population outside of any like border state. And throughout New Jersey, I've lived in New Jersey for 20 some odd years. I've lived in different parts of New Jersey. I've worked in different parts of New Jersey. And New Jersey has like these Hispanic enclaves
Hmm.
where you go to a town and it's nothing but Hispanic, right?
Yeah.
Um, and it used to be like maybe there would be half the population or maybe majority, and now it's like it might have been before like Elizabeth, New Jersey. Um, it used to be I would say 60% Hispanic. Now it feels like it's 80 to 90% Hispanic. All the black people that used to live there, I don't see them when I drive through there. I don't see any black people on the street, and I don't know where they went. Um,
Hmm.
but also, what's around New Jersey are warehouses everywhere. There are warehouses because New Jersey's kind of weird, highly dense populated areas in certain parts, but then there's other parts that are very suburban. But even around the suburban areas, literally down the street from me are warehouses. And I used to work for someone, not to give too much details, but I used to work for
Yeah.
someone and it brought me inside these warehouses. And I'm looking and I'm like, let's just use your common sense. I don't think these people are legal. And then you start talking to people and you're like, the people who bring them in, they're like, yeah, most of these people aren't legal. Like they would be
Hmm.
like 90+% aren't legal, which makes sense because they work by the day, right?
Yeah.
So they
And they
they
don't have to
they
do minimum wage and they don't have to do, like
well
everything that
actually
they'd have to
they
do.
and actually it's more structured than people realize because we always think
Hmm.
of like the person who's at Home Depot, but they have agencies and the agencies are basically they're setting up shop and taking in the Hispanic workers. They say, fill out this application, right? You can put whatever you want. I can put my socials 1, 2, 3, 4. As long as I have something, I put down the social, it's up to me if I put down something wrong or not. But they're not checking, they're just putting down whatever you give them. How do I know you're really this person, right? Especially if you give me a fake ID in which we already know that legal immigrants, it's very prevalent for them to use fake IDs, fake social security cards, right? White collar
Yeah.
crime is abundant, but they have no interest in checking. And then on top of that, I was told specifically that these middleman agencies, um, they don't do e-verify unless their client specifically asks for. And of course, what do you think? Most don't ask. So you have a very organized structure of a middleman company gathering all these illegal immigrants, putting them on a bus over to some warehouse in the middle of nowhere in New Jersey to work for a mainstream brand that you've heard of, to go in there and work in their factories and do all this stuff and bring them back to their neighborhood. And this happens every single day in New Jersey, all around the state. And people don't realize how prevalent it is. So the reason I'm bringing this up is you tell me that we have an effective unemployment rate of 23%. Yet we have all of these jobs that are being filled up in the state of New Jersey alone of illegal immigrants doing this. And you mean to tell me you can't find Americans that won't do these jobs? Like, I don't believe that whatsoever. I don't believe that whatsoever. Are there some industries that maybe you should have like H-1Bs come in from other places? Maybe certain immigrants are beneficial, blah, blah, blah. All right, there's a legal process for that to happen. But what I'm just seeing a perversion of our employment situation here in this country, where now everyone has to compete with minimum wage work, and no one's wages are going up. The left would always talk about America hasn't seen a wage increase. Well, I wonder why. Because we're fighting against illegal immigration labor. And what makes it worse, one of the reasons why, and the last thing I'll say, and I'll let you speak. One of the reasons why they like coming to New Jersey is because New Jersey has steadily increased their minimum wage. Now it's like $16 minimum
Mm,
wage in the state of
yeah,
New
that's what it
Jersey.
is here. That's what it is in Washington. Yeah, it's 16. It's
Yeah,
wild. It's wild. I mean, it's like that's how much you're making, and yet I don't, I mean, like, whatever. Like, if you go, if you try to get service somewhere, the service is really, really terrible. And you're just like, okay, I mean, but you're making 16 an hour, and it's like, it's the whole flip the iPad. You're like, all right, give me a tip. And you're just like, I ain't tipping you because, like, I know you make 16 bucks an hour. And unless you do something special, that's when you earn a tip. Cause, like, you can't tell me that you're only earning like $3 an hour or something. Like, that's not what's happening because I know what the
right,
minimum wage is. But yeah, I mean, it's out of hand. No, I mean, and what you describe is, I think, yeah, definitely part of the frustration. I mean, we've moved, a lot of our manufacturing outside the country already, and then the little that we do have, you have people that are undocumented, um, or it's not like a career anymore. It's not something where you can make money. It's minimum wage. It's not something, that's looked down with any respect or prestige. And then even beyond that, what they really want to do is just have robots. So I mean, that's going to be much more cheap and effective. So those jobs really aren't going to exist when people talk. Let's bring back manufacturing. And I'm like, I agree, but you guys realize that robots are going to be doing it though, right? Like like most of it. Like, I worked in the Tesla factory, and a lot of it was automated or semi-automated. I worked on a semi-automatic line, and you work with the robots, and that's really the future. I mean, you need people that understand how to work, with technology and with robots. And it's going to be a lot of engineers, or even not necessarily engineers, but just technical people that can understand and work with it. And so the era, I think, of the basic job that's just whatever, hitting a hammer over and over, is like going to be over. That's going to be a robot. So I do think we should bring manufacturing back, but people do have to be realistic about what the jobs are going to look like in the future, and it's going to be a lot of robotics and a lot of AI. Is going to take over most of these industries. So the future of work is, it's a bit grim. I mean, it's like it's either going to be importing labor that's willing to work very cheap, or otherwise. But I do think that a lot of Americans don't want to work for minimum wage for good reason, because it's very expensive. It's very expensive to live a life here, and immigrants may be willing to do things that we may not be willing to do, such as live with like 10 people in an apartment. And maybe that's something that's okay where they come from, and they're willing to do that here. And that's just like not part of our culture. That's not what we do. So we're not doing that. So we have, maybe we have roommates, or maybe we live alone. But the burden and the cost is pretty much all on us. So it's a precocious situation with employment, and I don't know where it's going. But I've heard a lot of people arguing that we need to get more people into manufacturing. I'm just not sure exactly how that's going to work. I'm not sure.
yeah.
I see the vision entirely, but I hope that it happens. I hope that we have more jobs that regular people can have, because that is how people got into the middle class. It was easy to get into the middle class when you have manufacturing jobs, and we could have more. I mean, honestly, I think Elon Musk might be part of the solution, honestly, because if he needs to make Optimus robots, for example, he needs to make cars, he wants to make, expand SpaceX or whatever, like he's going to probably be the giant of manufacturing in the country. And I think he knows that. And he's going to employ a lot of people. And he knows like what that's going to take. So we'll see how that works out. But yeah, I'm not sure. I think China's going to be the manufacturing giant. They already are, and I think they're going to probably stay that way.
Well, we'll see. We'll see about that. But For a Better World said, we're a nation built by immigrants who are hardworking, that believe in America, and these are jobs citizens don't want, but unemployment was lower. Now everything is going to get really worse for people thanks to tariffs. All right, so
Well, yeah.
this
I mean, there's a lot to unpack
there,
there.
yeah, there's this, and I'm sure this is called a good faith chat, so I'm not trying to be of bad faith. But there is a general conflation of illegal immigration and legal immigration. And the reason why it's very important, right? Every group, Irish, yep, Italians, yeah, fair enough. But we're not talking, I don't think Heidi is anti-immigrant. I'm not anti-immigrant. My father was an immigrant
No,
to this
I
country.
mean, my grandparents are immigrants, so, yeah.
Right. So it's not about should we have immigrants or not. That's not the question. The question is illegal immigration and the
Yeah.
prevalence of it. When you have illegal immigration, what happens is you have people who are skating the system, who are committing fraud, identity fraud, and they're doing all types of illegal activities that are white collar crimes. We're not even talking about the, real criminal stuff and stuff like that. We're just talking about white collar crimes. So they're committing white collar crimes. They're doing everything that we're not allowed to do,
Yeah.
right? On top of that, I can say that my name is such and such, and I work here, and I can give identification to the state and say, my name is such and such, and here's my fraudulent ID. Can I get Medicaid and Medicare? Can I get food stamps? And this is a real thing that
Yeah, this is
happens.
happening. Yeah, they've uncovered a lot of this, like recently. Yeah.
And I know people who've seen it. My
Yeah.
my my wife used to work for uh, I'm not going to say where, but she worked in New York City and walked past the Medicaid spot, nothing but Hispanic people.
Yeah.
Now, you would say, oh, you might racist stereotyping, but come on, we're just using common sense here. We know what's going on, right? And you just mentioned it before. This is common. There is 5, 10 people that live in a particular home, right?
Yeah.
So imagine that same person who doesn't have a real driver's license gets into a car and runs into you,
Yeah.
right? Oh, guess
Yeah.
what? Oh, give me a ticket, sure, and I'll disappear in the middle of the night. You don't know if my name
Yeah,
is
they
real or
take
not.
off. They take off.
And
Yeah.
then guess what? Heidi's premiums go up. That, but even more so, let's erase those scenarios. Even more so, by having more in like a massive, plentiful illegal immigration operation, like what we've been suffering from in this country, we have hyper competition of the bottom, right? So the worker becomes plentiful, and so it's a scarcity thing. The more plentiful something is, the less of value it is, which is why all these people work minimum wage because it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. I can have you for a week and get rid of you and get another one,
Yeah.
right? But if there's scarcity, then there's value in the worker. And so if we potentially have tens, was it 10, 20 million illegal immigrants in this country, while at the same time having a effective 23% unemployment rate, and trust and believe, there are lots of people who live in poor areas. I was talking to someone in Mississippi. He's like, listen, there are poor people out here in Mississippi that would love to get that Amazon job that everyone wants to claim that no one wants. They would love to have that warehouse job. They would love to have these jobs in plenty of poor areas in this country because that's a leg up for them. And that's an opportunity where they can grow within a company. But if the modus operandi is to basically take the people who are coming from here, who just skating by, you can pay them the lowest legal amount so no one says anything, right? Just pretend like everything's above board. No one checks to see if they're legal or not. Like that's the type of system that we've been having here. So it's not even the old adage of, well, Heidi will work for minimum wage, but I'm going to pay him half of that. That's not even what's happening. What's happening is that they're paying them minimum wage because the real employee like Heidi, they would have to pay more and they know that. So they can skate by and get 50
Yeah.
people to do a job rather than getting 10 or 20 people to do a job that they know they could afford because these people are just so plentiful. And
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch of double dipping into the system. Like it's a complete mess. So I think we undercut how dramatic that illegal immigration affects people on the lower side of the economic ladder because people who work white collar jobs say, well, Americans don't want to do that because I don't want to do that. Fuck out of here. There's a ton of people out there who would love to work that warehouse job because you know what? It's better than unemployment. And that warehouse job, if they're struggling to get people to come in, guess what? That increases your value as a person who's willing to go in there and do that job. But if they got a whole bunch of people who don't care, I will do anything, I will do, and pay me the least amount of money, they don't care, then your value as a worker goes down every single
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
I know you have like about 10 minutes
Yeah.
or so.
Yeah. A little bit less. I probably should leave a couple minutes before
Yeah,
5:30. But yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
let you respond. I said a whole lot.
No, I mean, I think, there's a lot going on in the chat. And I mean, yes, immigrants have been important to our country, of course. There's been a lot of, very honest and hardworking immigrants that come, but I mean, that's not really the problem. The problem is the honest and hardworking, like citizens of the country that don't have, what they should have. So the problem isn't that, we don't want to say, oh, these people are good, like they shouldn't have anything. The real problem is, well, these are American citizens that didn't break the law to come in here, that don't have anything and should have anything. So that's the issue, is like we just can't have a completely open policy where we say, yes, sure, we're going to have, USAID fund NGOs to put these immigrants up in, hotels and get them papers and get them phones and get them all this stuff, and then put them into work. That's not a good use of basic. That's just like, it's just not how we build a country. And then that's why, I don't know. There's a lot of things that go into that. I probably don't have time to go into all of it, but but it's like I probably don't have time to go how deep it really goes. But I think it's really, they're trying to replace the birth rate that's not happening. We're not having enough kids, so they're like, we got to import people. But this is how they're doing it, and it's nefarious, I think. And then you have people what we don't know who they are, and so even if 95% of these immigrants are hardworking and good, the 5% that are actual criminals, like psychos, that go and kill and rape people and murder them, that's a major issue. We don't know who the hell they are until we catch them. And that's a big problem because we don't know who they are, but everybody knows who I am. Everybody knows who Adam is. Everybody knows who you are in the chat. Like you can't hide really, not as easily. Like you were born here and you have, a long history of who the hell you are. These people could just come right over and nobody knows who the hell they are, and they can change their identity and jump from state to state, and we're funding that. So that becomes a problem because like meanwhile, the person in Mississippi or whatever who would like to work a job sees their interest rates go up, sees the cost of living go up, sees their housing go up, and they're wondering like what the hell's going on. So I think that we can have a balance to where we have some people that come in legally and go through the process. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you have people that flood in, and mess up the job market with supply and demand, then there becomes a problem for everyday Americans that just are confused as to why they can't afford anything and why they can't get a job. And they don't understand all of this, and nor should they have to, because they really just want to eat. So that's the problem that we're at. But yeah, I wish I had a little bit more time. Maybe we'll talk about we'll talk about things again, I'm sure. But yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot going on. It makes sense why people are upset, and it's not about hating these people. You know, sure, we I think everybody can accept that most of them are probably good people, but the fact is that people are struggling. Americans that were have been struggling for many years, and so they're really sick of it, and something needs to be done.
yeah, yeah. And just to quickly summarize, we can't be a nation of a two-tier system of expectation. You can't tell Adam and Heidi that you must abide by these rules, and Adam and Heidi's employer that you must pay these employment taxes and you do all these things and follow these laws, while turning a blind eye to someone who is using fraudulent information. There was one study I saw that said upwards of 75% of illegal immigrants use fake social security card numbers. Like that's a major problem.
Yeah, and
And
it's like,
so
yeah, for a better world, they're all criminals because they're criminals if they came here illegally. I just want to say that. So,
yeah,
that they
I
already
mean
started with a crime. So 100% are actually criminals if if they came here illegally. I'm sorry. But yeah.
yeah. I mean, but there at the end of the day, we have rules and we have processes. You have our employers pay a high amount of taxes, right? And if you provide them an opportunity to not pay any taxes or to pay an extremely low amount of taxes because I'm paying this person minimum wage, or having them go through a third party so I don't have to pay any employee taxes, and that third party is getting a whole bunch of people at minimum wage. Like you're developing a system that allows people to skate underneath the rules. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
everyone else has to abide by it. Look at construction. Construction, I talked to a construction worker. I cannot compete in this one industry, so I don't even bother. This is what a guy has told me. We don't even bother doing roofing because if we try to do it the right way, we cannot compete because I got to pay
Yeah.
employee taxes, I got to pay insurance, I got to pay for all this
Yeah.
stuff. They can put 10 guys up there. If one falls down, hurts himself, they don't care. They get another one. Like
Yeah,
this
I
is
mean, same
this
thing.
is
My
the
wife's
market.
in that industry, and she's been out of work for a few months, and I've been trying to figure out why, and that might be part of it because it's like she has to get paid whatever it is that she makes, which is high wages because she's in a union. Maybe they don't want to pay that. They don't want to pay union wages, so so that's why she's not getting any work. It's like, yeah, she has good wages and good benefits, but they might not want to pay that.
Yeah.
So yeah, but great conversation. I do have to jump, unfortunately, but I loved getting to chat with you. It's been a minute, so
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And thanks for everyone for being here and listening and participating in the chat.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for jumping in and speaking with us.
Yeah.
This has been a good conversation. We're gonna cut it from here. Thank you for everybody in the chat who agreed and disagreed in what we were talking about. But yeah, and for everybody who's watching this on the replay, thank you so much for listening to the conversation. This is a
Thank
good
you.
faith chat. Heidi, we will obviously keep in touch. And everyone, have a wonderful evening. Peace, love, and God bless.
Yeah. Peace. Thanks, Adam. Bye.
Peace.